Ladies and gentlemen, Columbia Global Centers, Nairobi, and the Salim Ahmed Digital Archives warmly welcomes you to our forum this afternoon on harnessing digital innovation for progress. This is part 3 of this series. And kindly note that we'll be recording this session, which will be posted on our YouTube channel as soon as we're done editing. Kindly submit your questions through the Q&A feature. The moderator will direct them to the panel after the initial discussion. I'll now hand over to our director, Dr. Murugi Dirango, to say a few words and welcome our audience. Karibu Murugi.
Thank you very much, Pauline. Our distinguished guest and our very honorable participants. Thank you for joining us today for the continuation of our Salim Ahmed Salim Digital Archive webinar series. My name is Murugi Dirango, and I'm the director of Columbia Global Centers in Nairobi. CGC Nairobi, as it is popularly known, is part of Columbia Global, an initiative that was established by Columbia University in New York. Columbia Global brings together major global initiatives across Columbia University to advance knowledge and foster global engagement. Columbia Global's mission is to address complex global challenges through groundbreaking scholarly pursuits, leadership development, cutting-edge research, and projects that aim for social impact. Our long-term goal is to reimagine the university's role in society as not only a nexus for learning and intellectual exploration, but also as a catalyst for creativity and impact locally, regionally, and globally. Columbia Global leverages the remarkable scholarship, expertise, and resources of Columbia University to address the world's most complex challenges. The Nairobi Columbia Global Center facilitates collaboration between Columbia University and diverse stakeholders in Eastern and Southern Africa. By forming strategic partnerships, we connect academic institutions, government bodies, NGOs, multinationals, and other entities with Columbia's faculty, students, and alums to address regional challenges and to foster meaningful dialogue and change. We strive to ensure our programs align with regional interests, working across our range of themes, including climate, health, education, refugee and migration, and business. Today, I'm pleased to share that we partnered with the Salim Ahmed Salim Digital Archive to present exclusive webinars that explore Dr. Salim Ahmed Salim's life and legacy. This initiative, commissioned by the President of the United Republic of Tanzania, Her Excellency, Dr. Samia Suluhu Hassan, aims to deepen partnerships and address contemporary challenges that leaders face today. Dr. Salim's extensive contribution to Africa in peacekeeping, diplomacy, and development have cemented his legacy as one of the continent's most influential leaders. By highlighting Dr. Salim's achievements, we aim to inspire current and future generations to engage deeply with the region's heritage and drive impactful initiatives. So far, we have completed 2 webinars in this series. The first one was on enhancing good governance practices for sustainable development, which explored the role of good governance in fostering economic growth and social cohesion. The second one was on exploring effective leadership in complex environment, which underscored his leadership principles, strategies, and styles. You can catch these episodes on our Columbia Global Centers Nairobi YouTube channel. Today, we will delve deeper into the digital space. Through Dr. Salim's legacy, we will attempt to answer the question, how can you use digital archiving to preserve and promote African stories? Dr. Salim is an alumnus of the School of International and Public Affairs at Columbia University. He is a close friend of the Nairobi Center and has made significant contributions while serving on our advisory board. He's a celebrated Pan-Africanist and an elder statesman who spent over 6 decades shaping and influencing critical moments in world history. Dr. Salim's illustrious career and dedication to peace and development make him an exemplary figure from which we can learn. Through this webinar series, we look forward to gaining valuable insights and fostering stronger collaboration to tackle the challenges of our time. Remember to stay tuned for the final upcoming webinar, which will examine access to information, empowering communities through information sharing. I thank you for your attention, and let me now invite our very able moderator, Mwalimu John C.B. Okumu, to introduce the next section. Karibu Mwalimu.
I was muted, so I'll start again. Thank you, Marugi. Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 3 of the Salim Ahmed Salim webinar series under the title, Harnessing Digital Innovation for Progress, registering in my own mind as the digitization episode. As you have heard, my name is John C.B. Okumu. I am a broadcast journalist of many years standing, speaking to you from Nairobi. May I first of all present you with a definition. It's culled significantly in the circumstances from an artificial intelligence or AI source. The digital age, also known as the digital era or information age, refers to the current period in human history characterized by the widespread adoption and integration of digital technologies into every aspect of life. This era began in the late 20th century with the advent of personal computers, the internet, and digital communication tools, fundamentally transforming how information is created and received. As established in the 2 prior episodes, these discussions are centered around a man whose work and legacy will be further immortalized by the creation, about a year ago, of the online Dr. Salim Ahmed Salim Digital Archive. And for those of us who are into fun facts, today, Thursday the 23rd, is Daktari's birthday. Everybody knew that, I'm sure. So happy birthday, Dr. Salim Ahmed Salim. By way of a roadmap, we could try to unpack, as we say nowadays, the linkages between digitization and Dr. Salim's thinking on good governance. The buzzwords that come to my mind in that regard from my research for this series are the empowerment of future leaders, a code word for young people, transparency, accountability, and ethical leadership, shortened to good leaders, corruption, or more like it, anti-corruption, the fight against corruption, democracy and public participation, because for Daktari, people-centered leadership was key. Sustainable development, meaning living now and looking to the future. Conflict resolution, for a 7-year-old avoiding having wars and big fights. And international cooperation, getting along as members of the human race on this planet Earth. Perhaps far too much to cover in about an hour in the time available to us, coupled with a desire on your part who are watching for audience participation. But we shall try our best, and my moderator's plea to the panelists, sometimes ignored, is for each of them to be as short and sweet as they can be. May I introduce you then to our four equally engaged but different hat-wearing panelists. Perhaps they could give a wave of the hand in case we're confused when they first hear their names. So, in the first wave to the masses, inspired by the words ladies first, please let me start with Zuena Para. She is a dynamic leader at the forefront of innovation and technology, driving impactful initiatives that bridge technology and social impact. As the Director of External Affairs and Vodacom Tanzania Foundation, she leads strategic communications, policy analysis, stakeholder engagement, and transformative programs, empowering women, youth, and underserved communities. With leadership experience spanning roles such as CEO of Smile Telecoms Tanzania and founder of, I hope I'm saying it the way it's meant to be said, SNDBX Space. It could be something like space, but we'll go for SNDBX Space, a hub for early stage startups and SMEs. Zuena is a passionate advocate for leveraging technology to unlock inclusive opportunities. I like that word inclusive because I'm going to be taking you up on it. We could assume that some of these gifts to us are very elitist. Her commitment to sustainable development and lifelong learning has earned her recognition, including the Women in Tech Africa Award for Global Leadership. Well done, Zuena. Inspired by the words, "Let the youngest be introduced last," I shall move on to Jumaine Mtambalike. I do hope I pronounced your name well. A co-founder and chief executive officer of Sahara Ventures, best known for championing building a stable innovation ecosystem in Africa. And at that point, I just want to stop technology because I'm hearing voices from there's spirits in the room. But I was saying that you're best known for championing the building of stable innovation ecosystems in Africa. In innovation circles, Jumaine is the first manager of the Buni Innovation Hub and champion of Silicon Dar, Tanzania's first organically formed technology district in Dar es Salaam, the country's financial capital. For 2 successive years, that is 2017 and 2018, he was voted the most influential Tanzanian in science and technology. Hongera ndugu. His mantra is the use of innovation, technology, and entrepreneurship to solve Africa's most complex challenges. Now, if we were in more flippant circumstances, I'd have asked you why you were named after the Kiswahili for Tuesday, but that won't increase my paycheck, so I'll move on. The next person to be introduced is Elisha Ondieki Makori, PhD. Could you wave to the masses, Elisha? A Kenyan who teaches at the University of Nairobi. In addition to being a dedicated researcher and data analyst, he has research passion and interests in artificial intelligence, data and informatics, management information systems, ICT, and digital innovations. He serves on the Reviewers Board for Human-Computer Interaction and is an active member of the International Federation for Information Processing. And our youngest but no less eminent panelist, is Princely Hope Glorious, a Tanzanian. He is the founding director of On Stories Group. His expertise lies at the nexus of global cultural stewardship and emergent technologies, fostering co-inventive innovation to preserve heritage and reimagine narratives in Africa and beyond. Consequently, his work has pioneered extended reality, XR. When I meet these things, I have a bit of a smile on my face because it means absolutely nothing to me. I'm computer semi-illiterate, but I'll read with confidence. XR, media tech, including virtual and augmented reality, which of course is VR, AR, and AI in narrative development, cultural innovation, and participatory storytelling across East Africa. He was selected as a 2024 Institut, I've got to get my French going, Institut Français Digital Culture Leader, and also won the 2024 Culture and Development East Africa Creative Economy Leader Award. All of which to say that we have a well and truly competent, I think is a good word from the dictionary, panel. And I hope, Princely, that you'll work towards being distinguished by the time you're finished with life. So, let's start. I think that the challenge to us is to go fast on many issues. And I think that from what I've said, I'm going to see the hats that you're wearing, and I'm going to go, assuming that he's wearing an academic's hat, I'm going to go first to Elisha. And thinking ahead, I want you to put your heads around the idea of digitization as an aid to historical memory by linking it to the birthday boy. But first of all, Elisha, if I may, how has this digital age impacted how change of tenses? How is this digital age impacting our beloved continent of Africa in very empirical terms?
Thank you, Mwalimu Kumu. Once again, greetings, everyone. Let me also note that I'm deeply honored to participate in this particular webinar. And first, let me take this opportunity to wish the founder of this excellent digital platform, Dr. Salim Ahmed Salim, a very happy birthday. And it's really special that this webinar coincides with this birthday, making it a very wonderful occasion. Secondly, I could also like to extend my sincere gratitude to the organizers and also the team behind this significant platform. And therefore, this particular milestone initiative is not only for the people of Tanzania, but also for the entire global community, particularly Africa and the entire Eastern African region. So to come back to your very good question that you have really asked, fellow participants, first things first, that particular question can be answered in very simple ways. It's about inclusive digital transformation and empowerment. And what do I mean by saying this? This is the golden age where transformation and empowerment are basically sustained through advancements in AI, deep learning, machine learning, robotics, cloud computing, data analytics, among others. Secondly, this is the digital age, the modern digital age that connects digital transformation, digital government transformation, digitization, and also digitizing. Lastly, these pillars are not just contemporary concepts, but these are public goods and foundational frameworks that usually bring value to people communities, societies, through which digital platforms and electronic resources are provided. In conclusion, I can say that these initiatives drive innovation that enhances service delivery, governance across countries, governments, and also organizations. So in terms of hierarchy, we can begin with the inclusive digital transformation. The second one, the second aspect is the digital government transformation. The third aspect is the digitalization. And the fourth one is digitization. So the first three, I can basically connect them to the development. It's basically the development, implementation, and the utilization of digital technologies and digital innovations to enhance operations and the services in organizations, industries, and also professions. The last aspect, which is digitization, given that we are at various levels of development, we still have products and services that are not digitized and therefore easily accessible through digitization, which basically means converting from paper, from basically analog information to digital information, digital product and service. And I remember sometimes back, even here in Kenya, there is a time the digital analog was really a very major political campaign, especially in the last two elections that we have already had. Now, let us also talk about applied and digital innovation. And in between, I can also share with you some two questions here. In what ways can artificial intelligence be used to solve human problems and also at the same time to be able to mitigate some of their challenges in terms of ethical related practices? Secondly, how can digital innovation practices and application be able to address critical human challenges in the various sectors? Talk about climate, talk about education, talk about politics, talk about Mwalimu Kumu's field of specialization, media and information, talk about management and other related issues. So besides all those, these digital applications are sometimes also referred to as digital intelligence systems, are used to solve human problems and also to enhance transformation and also empowerment at the same time. Healthcare and medicine, public service delivery, governance and leadership, media and information, finance, business, just among. I was basically mentioning just a few of them. If you allow me, for example, to just take a case of healthcare and medicine, how can digital innovation...
Sorry. Because that's very much a separate rubric in my... I'm going to display my first evidence of rudeness and say, let's not go for the example, because I think our panelists are going to tie it to Daktari. So I think I'm somewhat content in the terms that you've defined. Let's move on as a group, if I may. And in that regard, I'm going to go to you, Princely, and ask you as a young man. Here we are celebrating an archive on a man's birthday. As a young person, this whole notion of historicity, what do you think this archive is doing for us, for you in Tanzania?
Thank you, Mwalimu. And it's excellent that we're actually doing it on the boy genius's birthday, as Daktari was called. You've made a few age, and Daktari was much younger than me when he was in the early 80s, when he was vying for the Secretary General of the United Nations, and that sense of history is important, not just you know, as a way of just looking at the past for its own sake, but it's important to tie a thread to where we are and where we're going. You know, if there's the saying that whoever does not remember the past is doomed to repeat it, and is doomed to fail at the instances where you don't repeat the parts of the past that have brought us progress. And that's the idea that we can archive, we can remember what's good, what's notable, what's honorable, both individuals like Dr. Salim, but not just the individuals, but his ideas, the ideas of anti-corruption, the ideas of a more inclusive world, the ideas of leadership and nurturing young leaders. These are all ideas that bring progress, and the only way you can remember them is by actually kwa Kiswahili tunasema kuzinakili. We have to put them down. We have to find a way to make noise about them. We have to find a way to point people towards these ideas of progress, because societies can only progress based on the ideas they have lying around. We need a repository of clear ideas. We need a repository of cultural ideas that we can emulate. And so history plays a huge part of that, because it bridges the present to the future. I've done a few projects, for example, with the National Museum of Tanzania. And the work that we were doing for them was helping them modernize, digitize artifacts and objects that they've had in their exhibitions for a very long time, but they're struggling to garner interest. They're struggling to scale and distribute them to new audiences. They're struggling to create interactive ways of getting people to kind of interact with the past, to learn from it. And, so for example, we did a few augmented reality. You mentioned that, these are buzzwords in your mind, but what this means in practice is we took Makonde masks, tribal masks, and Makonde scarification and tattooing practices, and we created digital artifacts of them that if you go now to the National Museum of Tanzania, you can have an interactive exhibit directly with the past that gives you context, that gives you an understanding of why these things are as they are. And so this whole idea of creating cultural repositories, this whole idea of creating archives, this whole idea of the past and our heritage is both an exercise in remembering, but also an exercise in inventing the future. So that's what I would say. Like the remembering the past is not just an exercise of memory in itself, but it's an exercise of inventing the future. The future it doesn't just spring up on its own. We as people have to create that future. But if we don't learn from the past, we're doomed to repeat mistakes. We're doomed to fail to iterate and correct errors. So be well with this idea of creating the future by linking back to the past.
Thank you. My journalistic ploy is just to get everybody to hear everybody else for the first time, so that at least you can go back to your families and say, I was in this webinar and I actually said something. So, Jumaine Nikwako Ndugu, if you are the guru, I set you up as a sort of guru of this space in Tanzania. I think it falls to you to tell us what you do. How do you see, is there any relevance to the concerns that Daktari had before we go to them one by one, that are being treated by digitization?
Yeah, thank you so much first for the opportunity, but also like to wish, as my fellow contributors said, happy birthday to one of the Africa's finest. From my perspective, any major change comes with the positive and negatives. So we should expect the challenges, but I'll rather focus on the opportunities. Of course, there'll be a lot of challenges. There'll be a lot of challenges in terms of how we behave and respond as a society. We are living in the generation where a small group of people with certain specific cultural and social values are designing technologies that are supposed to be absorbed and used by everyone across the world. That of itself is a threat. As Africans, we have our own values, we have our own social perception, we have our ways of living, and now we're forced to use and adapt some of these technologies. And one of my biggest fear is the fact that African talent, African engineers, and African experts are not even in the rooms when some of these technologies are being designed. So I concur with Dr. Ri's fears and challenges that some of these technologies will pose a threat. But when you look on the positive side of things, we are in one of the most exciting times as African continent. We are post Industry 4.0 or the fourth industrial revolution. For the first time in the history of the planet, a young kid who is living in a rural town where my father was born in Wangika, Sengelema, has the same access of content and information as the kid who is living in San Francisco Bay Area in the United States, provided they have access to the internet, which means it gives us a fair starting point depending on what you consume when you go online. So these are exciting times for Africa and for young Africans. We all know we have one of the youngest median age as a continent. Africa's size of internet economy was expected to reach 180 billion US dollar by 2025. Mobile penetration is up than ever before. Internet penetration is up than ever before. We are seeing African young people capitalizing on the creative economy, on the gig economy, on platform economy, on sharing economy. And these are all new types of economy that are being brought in by digital transformation. So the key issue is, even though there are a lot of negative consequences when it comes to digital transformation, how as a continent strategically we adapt and we consume these changes to an extent that we'll be able to capitalize and get a competitive advantage against other regions in the world. So I'll stop there for now.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Although you were being very nice and saying, let's accentuate the positives, in my journalistic mind, I was wanting at some point to delve in to the great fears, this culture of imposition and the idea that I know more about you than you know about yourself, which seems to be entering into the equation. And I will come back to the notion of, are we as Africans forever playing catch up without any degree of innovation ourselves, or indeed pushback against threats to what we presume to be our culture? But we'll get there. It's getting exciting for me. It's getting exciting for you. Zuena, I'm going to be sexist in your regard. I see you as a woman, and I see you as a woman in leadership, and I see you in management at Vodacom. Can we address the issue of gender and the manner in which you might see those? We talked about the undeserved, we talked about the youth and women, those who have been marginalized. What is digitization going to do for them? And how do you, and telling us what you do, maybe you might begin saying by what you do, and just saying how how the struggle is continuing for you. That's a woolly question, but I hope you saw something. There's a kernel of inquiry there somewhere.
Thank you, Malimu. So maybe I'll start with inclusion is who, and then go into the inclusion is what. Many times when we talk about inclusion, we look at underserved communities or marginalized groups, as you have mentioned, being women, and girls, and to some extent, people would throw in people with disabilities, but it's more than that. You have indigenous communities. To Princely's point, it's about where we're coming from and where are we going? And culture is part and parcel of that. We have many indigenous groups in Tanzania. If you look at the Hadzabe, where population is dying, culture is slowly slipping through. And one way to preserve this is through digital or using technology, but also inclusion looks at also youth, but also the elderly. A lot of times, many interventions that are brought into space, it more focuses on women and youth, and we forget about the elderly. But if you look at statistics, especially on the telecom side, the vulnerable groups of people are the elderly. The frauds, the scams that are happening, the identity theft that is happening, it usually happens to those, to the elderly group. But when we talk about inclusion is what, and I'll talk from a telecom technology perspective. First things first, it's about access. Yes, to Jumanne's point that today a child in the village in Africa can have access to the same content a person in San Francisco has, provided that they have internet connectivity. And that is the biggest gap. That is the biggest gap, internet connectivity. And that is caused by many things, whether it's geographical. We have mountains, we have valleys, we have rivers, we have big water bodies surrounding us and whatnot. So there's infrastructure where we need to build broadband networks. We need to build mobile coverage. We need to build public Wi-Fi in underserved areas for them to have access to this information. But then there is the aspect of affordability. You have your data costs, your device cost. If the data is not affordable, if devices are not affordable, then these digital services that we talk about, they'll never be accessible to the low income or all income levels at that in that specific area. But once they have devices, then you have your skills and literacy gap. Providing digital literacy training, making sure that the young, the elderly, the marginalized group all have the same skill set to be able to navigate the digital space, but also the knowledge on how to protect themselves in such realms, whether it's their identity. You spoke on something where people know you before they meet you. And I look at it from a very different lens. I look at it in the sense that today we use customer information to create products and services. But is that what it's more than that. Data is almost, it's something that people like entities use to be able to sell. And part of that is your habits, your behavior, and what you use, what products and services you use, but accessible technology for people with disabilities as well. When we talk about the archive, when we talk about the Dr. Salim archive, you're looking at localized, culturally relevant content that is built not only for Tanzania, but to the many countries that he was able to connect with, many countries where he lived, traveled through, or even worked with. But accessible technology also, when we talk about inclusion, it's about technology that is for people with disabilities. And if I look at the content of the archive, it's one of the very few websites I can go to and I say that there is content that is video, there's content that is voice, there's content that is that I can read, and I can tell stories out of it, right? And make and more or less share the history that I'm reading of it. But lastly, one thing that I think that sets back Tanzania, but also I would talk about sub-Saharan Africa in general, is policy and regulation. I think we need to have a mindset shift and look at pro-growth policies that would be able to bridge the digital divide and support equitable innovation. But interventions as well to combat online discrimination, fraud, exclusionary practices, and so forth. So when we holistically look at digital inclusion for all, and the marginalized groups or the groups of people that we say that underserved communities, then we need to look at it end to end, policy and regulation, content and services, skills and literacy, but also access and infrastructure.
Thank you. Right. Well, this just proves how grand and grandiose our topic is. I think I'm going to go back to you, Elisha. Excuse me for being so rude in the first instance, but this perhaps may be the moment for you to give an example. And of the many ticks to be ticked, you brought up the issue of healthcare. So may I allow you at this point to go to your examples? Elisha, if you're with us, I can't see you on the screen, but maybe you're still there.
But
Some examples. Some examples.
It's okay. Thanks a lot for the presentation. Let me now capture on some of the issues I said. If I can just make a recall up, we are basically connecting this digital platform in relation to solving various human problems and also challenges that we have in various areas. Among these, for example, there is healthcare and also medicine. And one of the big questions about this, how can digital innovation transform healthcare and also medicine in order to improve and also ensure that ethical use of these technologies are used and appreciated. In relation in healthcare and medicine, we all know various AI applications are basically used to analyze data, to predict and also to monitor disease outbreaks for various treatment and all that. Hospitals and clinics collect large amounts of patient data and also use data analytics to be able to identify the various trends and also to optimize resource allocation and also reduce operations and many others. That's the beauty of what I said about digital innovations and applications in the context of healthcare and many others. I know, for example, in Kenya, we have digital platforms like we have SIPA, which basically uses blockchain to be able to manage health finances and also to be able to access health services through the use of mobile phones. I know the great people of Tanzania. You have the Tanzanian data lab laboratories that basically this is a particular project which is working on health data analytics and therefore basically using AI to be able to predict malaria outbreaks and also to be able to enhance some of the related practices. Let me also ask you this question here as panelists. Do you think from where you are, the use of these digital platforms, for example, AI, the use of robots, are they really taking or replacing human jobs and opportunities? I have a case here in Kenya, very recent. I know there's a pilot project which is currently underway in the hospitality industries whereby robots are being used to serve customers and also to attend to some of the services in various hotels and restaurants. That's just basically an example of where we are. But does it really mean that digital platforms like these ones here are taking our jobs and all that? The second aspect, yes, sir.
Thank you, Elisha. Please, again, the plea to keep it short and nasty. Could we answer your question first?
All right.
Go in little tidbits, because I'll tell you the time factor. East African time, we're meant to stop in about 10 minutes and then allow half an hour for participation. And we haven't so much as dredged through Daktari's preoccupations. So a mate of mine wrote to me from Singapore and said there he was sitting minding his own business, and the waiter that came to serve him a cup of coffee was a robot. African solutions to African problems. Do we need the benefits of digitization in a continent of great underemployment? Let me put it that way. And just very quickly, Zuena, you might go first. What is your individual response to this? Technology and machines are getting rid of human beings. you know, human beings are getting rid of animals in the park. You know what I'm saying? This whole Zuena.
Yeah. Thank you. The way I see it, I think it complements our existence as opposed to getting rid of our existence. And there are many examples. I believe on the call we have Jumanne and Princely that are AI experts or innovation technology experts in that space. But why I say it complements us as opposed to replacing us. I'll take a very simple example of a solution that was deployed about 3 years ago, and it was looking to save or to reduce maternal deaths in Tanzania. And it is as simple as calling it the Uber of emergency transportation for pregnant mothers that need to get from their home to a health facility. And because it was, it focused on one key area. Today, it has transported more than 100,000 women in Tanzania. It has reduced the percentage of maternal deaths from 63% to what is now 32%. It has scaled nationwide, and it is now being adopted in Kenya, in Lesotho, as well as Malawi. So a simple solution that uses technology to connect a mother that is in need of emergency services is in the modern world, you'd look at it as the Ubers and the Bolts and transportation, because that is what they need. But here it was transformed, and we say that technology here, yes, we'll use it, but getting from point A to point B, I'd rather just stand on the street, wave down a boda and say, get on it and go, as opposed to call it from the app. But the more needing or more pressing need was the fact that we needed to get people from one place to another to get the health need that they need. So it's about complementing and looking at what are the needs, what are the gaps, and addressing those gaps. And I think technology is to resolve that. Yeah.
Princely, I'd like you to go on that question, and then the guru cap is there. The guru can tie it all up for it. Princely, to the Elisha's question.
So every time new technology has come, we've had waves, and this is historical. Like even when the refrigerator was invented, people went to the street and banged their pots and drums and said, "This is the devil's box." You know, that we don't want anything to do with it. But we've found as humans, as knowledge creators, we've found solutions where we've integrated these new technologies into improving our lives, into improving the processes of how we do things and all of that. But I've heard a few times, not just on this panel, but elsewhere, people conflating digital with AI, right? Where we conflate digital tools or digital methods with artificial intelligence, and the difference that perhaps it's a slight difference with massive implications is that artificial intelligence, the machines can learn. The machines take on the human, you know, before now, every other technology we've invented has been an invention where we use it to augment ourselves, but it's generally a dumb tool. Now we've created a tool that can self-reinforcively improve itself. And of course, there is caution to be taken, but the precautionary principle generally might not be the best idea, because one of the best framings for artificial intelligence is AI as a force multiplier. It can multiply my capabilities as an individual. So about, you know, AI is all the rage now. About 5 or 6 years ago, I had the privilege of using a very, very early transformer, you know, AI, LLM transformer, and I wrote an article with it, and it got me thinking that in my current, you know, work, I would take, let's say, a few days to type this out. This has taken me a few hours to you know, to kind of collaborate with this tool. But what it has actually done is it's multiplied my force. It's force multiplied. Now, the issues then remain for Africa, for example. The underlying issues remain. If AI is a force multiplier, what do we have for it to multiply? If it's multiplying intelligence, how much of that intelligence is lying around in Africa? Zero with whatever number, you end up with zero, right? So the challenges of AI as a force multiplier for Africa, for Tanzania, are still the same. Mwalimu Nyerere used to talk about things like ignorance and education and disease and all of those different things, and we still have all these different challenges to do, especially in our education, so that when the machines can augment us, they have something to augment. When the artificial intelligence can multiply something, it has something to multiply.
Right, and I will be so rude to stop you and go to Jumaine for a comment on the question, or a response to the question that Elisha posed.
Yeah, so to me, I'll be brief. I think we are entering the augmented age. We are moving from just artificial intelligence to augmented intelligence. Human beings will be working side by side with machine. So the key question should be whether we're going to be repressed or not. The key question should be, are we prepared to work side by side with machines? What strategies, what policies, what systems are we putting together to make sure we remain relevant when that time reaches? Because we're already entering that phase. Whether through our education curriculum, whether through our research and development, whether through our foresighting strategies, where do we see ourselves in the next 15, 20, 25 years? Because whether we want it or not, human and machine interaction will continue to increase to unprecedented levels. And this is something that African government, including Tanzania, needs to start to strategize. There'll be a lot of issues and a lot of challenges. One of the biggest one is the fact that we don't create these technologies. We're still mainly consumers. So how are we going to make sure we remain relevant and strategically aligned with our interests is one of the biggest challenges we are going to face. Another critical issue is the fact that at the ruling part, at the decision-making part, most of those who are making decisions and calling the shot, especially in African government and policymakers, they don't understand these technologies. It's like they're living in the past, but they're supposed to design policies and strategies for the next 25 years. So blended type of leadership is key, and I commend Colombia doing this kind of discussion, and maybe we should have more types of amalgam leadership where the old and the young, they're having this kind of discussions, because it's critical now, and we're at a critical phase on how these technologies will shape our continent. But if we continue to operate in silos where Zuena and Prince, the young guys, are sitting in one room and the older generation is sitting in another room creating policies, it's going to be catastrophic, because whether we want it or not, these technologies are going to disrupt us.
Thank you very much. I'm looking at my clock, my watch, my timekeeping gadget, and this is what we're going to do. The big challenge for me is always getting into the point where we have questions from the floor, the audience participation. But I don't think that with so many experts on the ground, we must try to continue to wade through Dr. Salim Ahmed Salim's preoccupations. So this is how we'll move. I listed 7 sort of commandments. And I'm going to ask Elisha, because he talked about the elections and trying to tabulate results, to number 4. And I'll just go round in a circle, starting, if you don't have an answer, pass it on. But I didn't name, we had number 1, which I'm going to put to Princely, the empowerment of future leaders. So if I gave you that as a rubric and gave you a minute and a half to answer that one, what would you say? That's yours. And we'll get to 7 and then invite participation from the floor. So, and if you go on forever, and the people on the floor will just have to sort of like be ignored for what it is, because life is tough. Here we go. Empowerment of future leaders. Princely, short and nasty answer to that. Digitization. I can't hear you. Sorry.
Here we go. I hope you can hear me now.
Yes, I can.
Thank you. So with things like digitization, I don't think it's the youth that need to be empowered. It might be the other way around. Because often I go into sessions where I'm training. I train people from the United Nations and the World Bank and all these other spaces. And what comes quite naturally, as you know, we're called digital natives. What might come seems to be a bridge too far in some instances. And Jumanne made an excellent point on the fact that so often the people making the policies, first, so many times it's the challenge is on definitions, right? Like you go into, you're talking about augmented reality or virtual reality or artificial intelligence or machine learning, and the challenge isn't even in developing a nuanced understanding of these things and the challenges that come with it, but the challenge is like, what are these things in the first place? And we're in a place where it's not just about empowering or working with youth. It's about tapping into both the wisdom of the old, but the energy and the intelligence and the drive and the knowledge of youth to kind of create an amalgam, as we've put it here, to create an amalgam of progress, because progress is knowledge creation, creativity, error correction, and all of those things are not limited to our ages. So I would say we've got to embrace a participatory approach. We've got to create channels like the one that Mwalimu Dr. Salim Ahmed Salim and Columbia University have created here, and even wider platforms. I've been lucky. I know Jumanne and Zuena have also been fortunate to be part of like maybe some policy discussions here in Tanzania. I hope that we can do even more across Africa, because with artificial intelligence, you can't wait, you can't wait to understand it to start thinking about how we can use it. And so we have to create a participatory youth and older people. Sorry to call you that, but our elders.
You can call us older people. I can cope with that definition.
Excellent.
Right, Zuena, it falls to you, my best friend. Transparency, accountability, and ethical leadership with the D word, digitization. What would you say under that? Because we're talking to the birthday boy.
Yeah, transparency, accountability, and
ethical leadership.
Transparency,
leadership. Accountability, and ethical leadership. Good leaders.
Yeah, good leaders.
Help to get us better leaders.
Yeah, it's a tough question, but I'll touch on a few areas. On the transparency side, I think one of the things that technology, like Jumanne said, there's good sides and bad sides. I think I'm going to touch a little bit on the bad side of things. There's been a plethora of misinformation, disinformation in the space. And I think one of the things that technology does offer is a platform to clear the air, but to fact check as well. But are we using it to the extent of understanding whether this information is wrong or this information is used to tarnish one another? Then that's the whole different aspect. On ethical leadership side of things, I think with the use of AI, the growing use of AI in terms of imagery, video, and what have you, I borrow a page from the recent elections in the US, and you look at the content that has been created in terms of the running candidates and all of that. Is it ethical use of AI? I would say no, but it's there. It is what technology has put on our plates. And I think it takes one leadership, one's understanding around leadership, around innovation, around management as well, to be able to drive ethical use of such technology. When we talk about accountability as well, accountability, there's two sides of the coin with accountability. It's those that actually pros accountability, and then there's also the aspect of you as an individual accepting and being accountable for what you're doing. And all of this, I think, in a nutshell, is around upbringing, it's around culture, it's around understanding, but also education around ethics and the use of technology. So I'll stop there.
Thank you very much. Jumaine, the other corruption, the fight against corruption and digitization. Is this going to make Daktari's vision of the future better?
Very interesting question. The technology is just a tool, and this is where it becomes complicated in Africa. Few years ago, we were creating solutions for tech for governance on behalf of one of our clients we're working with in Tanzania, to try to gather citizen engagement, but also to promote transparency and accountability in local government systems. But what happened is there was a bit of resistance to some of these local government leaders, because they clearly started to see some numbers will start to come out in terms of revenue collection at a local government authority level. What I came to realize was you first need to change a person who you want to be able to be in a position to adapt technology before you can make a meaningful use of technology. So yes, if we adapt technology, there's a better chance we're going to address some of the most challenging issues when it comes to corruption in Africa. But the challenge is not just to integrate technology, because technology also remains a tool. The challenge is the question that you asked Zuena and Prince. How are we going to create leaders who are going to be able to absorb technology so that technology can help us to address corruption? So it's more of a chaotic problem that requires systemic intervention. Yeah.
Thank you. Elisha, I'm trying to think of what you said before, and I think the other preoccupation here, democracy and public participation, and Dr. Salim's attachment to the idea of people-centered governance, plus digitization. Are the two twins or enemies?
Thank you, Mwalimu. Allow me to connect Dr. Ahmed Salim in line with the media and the information. And I think, as we all know, this is the fourth estate. But before I can be able even to come up with another question to connect to that, allow me to share you with this. We already know about the American elections, whose president was a few days ago, 96 hours was sworn in as the most powerful person. But when you look at the American elections, the mainstream media got it very wrong, because their preference and their communications and their data analytics were not really adding up, because they supported on a different aspect. I'm on a different political party, and therefore those data-related issues were not adding up. In 1922 here in Kenya, we also had the elections, but when we looked at the media information output to the general public, their communications and the results were two worlds apart. Right now in Africa, we have the African election, the African Union chairperson. And when you look at the social media, there's a lot of misinformation. And therefore that misinformation basically impacting negatively, especially when it comes to the issue of democracy and many more. Now, my question is this: how can Dr. Ahmed Salim, together with the media and the information, as the pillars of the fourth estate, very essential component when it comes to digitization and all those other issues that I said, inform the public, while at the same time they are able to combat and mitigate the spread of misinformation and also fake news. The purpose is to ensure that Dr. Ahmed Salim digital platform plays a very crucial role when it comes to society participation in terms of democracy, in terms of development, and many other related issues.
Thank you.
A quick rejoinder to that about public participation. In East Africa, we still have hunters and gatherers societies. So we really could like to see the central and critical role of this particular digital platform informing and transforming the people and also other related sectors in terms of governance and also in terms of development, so that they can get them out of their current status. Thank you, Mwalimu Mkuu.
Thank you. People normally just need time to think, so let me form out some questions. Question number 5 will go to Zuena, and it'll be digitization and sustainable development. Question number 6 will go to Jumaine, digitization and conflict resolution. And assuming that Princely is going to be a young person dealing with the whole world, you will go for digitization and international cooperation. So Zuena, I hope I've given you 30 seconds to have a response to, is there a linkage between digitization and sustainable development?
I would say, in a very short answer, I would say yes, definitely yes. If you look at, although one would argue that we've been making our way to 2030, with the sustainable development goals, are we anywhere near? Probably not. But now, with if I look at Tanzania, if I look at many countries in general that are incorporating technology and using technology as a force for good to connect people to a better future, we are accelerating the SDGs. The one thing that I would say is probably the bottleneck or the setback when it comes to using technology for SDGs or sustainable development is that everyone works in silos. We need to create a space for collaboration. We need to believe in the power of partnerships. We need to look at public-private partnerships that actually work and models that actually work, and how are we scaling for impact. And I think the one thing that actually works is if you look at the public sector, the private sector come together, almost always solutions that look at accelerating SDGs in that space scale much faster and have greater impact. And this would be my saying all the time, is that when we create a place where we can co-create, when we can collaborate, and we can champion partnerships, then we are all working together to build a better future.
Thank you. Jumaine, conflict resolution. Again, here am I, the layperson. Wars everywhere we could imagine, Darfur, Sudan, DRC. Is digitization a tool for progress that would please Dr. Salim? I can't hear you. Whoops.
So on the good side, digitization will allow us to there are different tools. If you remember the case of Ushahidi in Kenya, Ushahidi was used to report conflict incidences during the post-Kenya election, I think around 2008. Tools like that can be actually adapted to address issues when it's come to conflict resolution. But technology can also be used to promote accountability in post-election violence and things like that. Technology can also be used in warnings and also in peace building by advocating campaigns that brings people together, but also breaks social barriers among communities. That is on the good side of technology. But my other fear, if we're not going to use it well, it can also trigger so many other things when it comes to actually fake news and misinformation, but also when it's come to driving agendas that instead of keeping people in peace, but also influencing violence within communities. We've seen that happening. There's a lot of movement that are happening in social media that are being run by either political parties or people who have a certain political ideologies, and then use this platform to actually create more chaos than actually designing solutions. So what I would say to me, we should be more intentional when it comes to adapt technology for conflict resolutions. We should develop more tools. We should also create a way to manage and contain these platforms so that they don't drive and influence agendas that eventually leads to conflict within our communities and societies in Africa. Yeah.
Thank you. Princely, international cooperation.
So we live in a hyper-connected age, and so much of that hyper-connection has come out of digitization. So when we talk about digitization, it encompasses the internet, and a huge part of the information age has been this interconnectivity. Now, if you look at it from like a game theoretic sense, whether we cooperate or we don't, that's more of us. The tools for cooperation are plentiful. The desires, that's what that's what varies. But definitely digitization is a massive tool for cooperation, both in terms of like accessibility and connectivity, in terms of preserving our shared heritage, in terms of knowledge exchange, participatory narrative making. You can learn so much about other cultures in ways that even kings with the best messengers in just the past 100, 200, 300 years couldn't have done. And even in terms of capacity building, the same way the tools for cooperation are plentiful in the information age, the tools for knowledge are even more plentiful. You can learn almost anything. It's the desire to learn that's scarce. So the power of digitization and its potential for us to use it as a tool for progress and as a tool for cooperation, plentiful, abundant, and we must embrace it.
Thank you. Elisha, would you like to, just for the sake of egalitarianism, would you like to comment on anything that you've heard from the other panelists in the last so many seconds?
Contribute on this aspect of digital innovations in terms of productivity, empowerment, and not exploitation. We all know that digital solutions are really shaping and influencing the world as we know it, but there's need for us to support so that we can be able to navigate the waters of responsibilities and also be able to address some of the ethical related challenges. After all, sometimes Mwalimu and my fellow participants, you cannot stop an idea whose time has just come. You basically leave it the way it is. Think about it this way. Once upon a time, the internet was the new kid. And for the internet to be allowed to be a public resource, there was a lot of agitation. It was really very painful. It never came on a silver platter and all that. So even the simple calculator that we keep on using nowadays, it faced very massive opposition and many more. So when it comes to digital innovations, when it comes to new technologies, when it comes to any other related issues, we are strangers first and foremost. But with the time, we end up being very good friends. Just like the development of this particular Dr. Ahmed digital related platform. So instead of resisting, let us try to embrace digital related innovations in a symbiotic manner whereby all of us and the societies can be able to benefit. So lastly, when used very wisely, of course, there are challenges. These innovations make us and also ensure that we are very creative and very effective. And that's why I said for purposes of productivity, empowerment, and not exploitation. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I have to admit to a failing. It was said once and I didn't say it twice. And apparently, maybe I'll get it right for the last webinar. I didn't invite any questions to be posted, so none have been posted. So, okay, we've still got things to discuss. My last question to all of you, and again, we have to stop in about, what's the time now? We've got 5:18, so we've got 12 minutes. I want to go back to Jumaine's preoccupation for you. If you are on one of my sort of TV shows and I'm trying to grill you, I want to go back to this aspect of negativity, to end on a negative note, normally, and to ask you in the manner in which you were introduced, to think slightly. Here am I, proudly African, talking about Africa's time, listening to Thabo Mbeki's speech about the African Renaissance. I ask myself whether, if we are not the creators of our own reality, where we are players, what that reality can do. I'm seeing all of you basically very clever people, in your professor, doctor, young man with his hub, and I'm talking about whether digitization empowers the citizenry at large, or is going to be a powerful tool for a powerful elite. So think negativity and see whether we're going to actually be swamped by all this and just, be sort of invaded by people who come across from Mars, or whether Jumaine will lead us across to the sunlit uplands. But Zoena will go first. Zoena, you will go first. Zoena is the pronunciation. You'll go first, and we'll go in the manner in order in which you were introduced.
Yes, yeah.
So Zoena.
Yeah. So I'll say.
And we've got 10 minutes. So not 10 hours, but 10 minutes. Yeah, a minute each.
Yeah. Okay. So is technology, or is digitization empowering everyone? Yes, it is. And I'll talk about, I'll look at it from a financial inclusion space, the introduction of mobile money, how it has been able to cater for services for every individual. We have more than 60 million people in Tanzania, and more than 32 million are online and are able to use these services. So that's one. The other side of it, of course, you asked the question, is it for the elite few? The gap is growing, and the more time we take, this gap is going to become bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's why when we talk about having inclusive solutions, inclusive solutions that look at empowering citizen, I think it's imperative that all of us, when we talk about technology and how it will empower citizens, will look at it end to end and not just for the elite few. I spoke about earlier in terms of device affordability, smartphone penetration is still at less than 32% here in Tanzania, and that is still something that we need to address. Otherwise, then we will be every day innovating for this 60-something percent with the bare minimum technology. We're not using technology to its full extent. And when we don't use technology to its full extent, and this is how this gap grows. And in 10 years' time, you're looking at only empowering the elite few, or rather not empowering, but technology being for the elite few and not for everyone.
Thank you. Jumaine?
So I'll start with a note from Professor Ruha Benjamin in her book, Race After Technology, on how technology is going to affect us as Black Africans, and also Africans and Black Americans. So in a negative scenario, if you're looking at the foresighting and we're focused on negative future trend, so it can be something like this. So AI is being adapted by everyone, but AI has been designed by someone who particularly doesn't represent Africans. So how we define what a family is, how we define what a good food is, how we define who is God and how should we worship, everything will be controlled by another person who is not us. So the biggest question will be, at that point in time, if I call myself, I'm a Kenyan or a Tanzanian, what does that actually look like? Because if my son or my daughter, when they go to ChatGPT or to Gemini AI, and everything they get has been designed in Silicon Valley or in Beijing, what left for Africans to call themselves Africans? So that is my biggest fear when it comes to these technologies. Would we be able to build our own systems and structures, develop our own engineers and personnel to be able to influence what goes into these platforms? Because so far it's a gym code. A person who designed the platform is the one who has upper end to influence what is being given by the platform. So that is something that I'm seeing might be one of the biggest challenges for Africa moving forward. We might need to create more Elishas, more researchers, more experts, and more engineers that we can be able to, over time, the actual identity of an African will be gone. Yeah.
Thank you. Elijah?
Thank you, colleagues. Let me put it this way. Digital platforms, including this particular one, empowers governments, people, communities, and the societies as the solid foundation for governance, transparent, accountable, and also efficient systems. So bridging technological and social divides is very essential if we want to foster transformation and also be able to sustain development. Let me remind you about this African proverb, which says, when the roots are really very deep, there is no reason for us to fear about the wind. So as a vibrant, inclusive, and widely recognized resource, digital innovations may end up enriching the African heritage, while at the same time promoting about education, research, and also innovation. So digital innovations are not about preservation, but they are about the beacon of achievements that are able to embrace connections and also be able to address future innovations. May I end by saying this, however, this excellent resource for collaboration and for research and for transformation needs to move forward from discussion to actions so that we can be able to support it and we can be able to collaborate together as one. Thank you.
Thank you. Princely?
Thank you. So on the question of risks, there are two layers there. The first layer is the risk of exclusion, as we've spoken about, the identity loss, exclusion. And then the other risk is actually more existential, like AI, super intelligent machines can be non-aligned with us and actually create existential risks for us. But we could talk, more technically about things like fine-tuning the models and all of that. But I'll speak more on a principles level, that while caution on its own is useful and important, the precautionary principle as a principle has not been useful for bringing progress for humans. I like this quote by David Deutsch, Dr. David Deutsch. He talks about saying the precautionary principle would never have let us build the first fire, let alone start the Industrial Revolution. Progress always involves risk because it involves the unknown, but the solution to problems caused by innovation is always more innovation. That problems are inevitable, but problems are soluble, right? We can solve problems. And this might sound hand-wavy, but it is actually quite principled in the sense that humans have always faced problems and have always solved them by embracing this mindset of progress. When it comes to Africa specifically and the risks of artificial intelligence, I do hope that more of us can take these risks of embracing these new technologies to invent the future, because the future does not belong to the passive. We cannot just be passive consumers of what's coming, as if we're not agents of our own. When we started Honor Stories 8 years ago, and we're talking about artificial intelligence 8 years ago, we seemed a little cuckoo in the head, right? But the fact that we did invest in those tools, the fact that we did create some platforms that even now we're working on projects that reframe artificial intelligence as a participatory technology, where we can get, because think about it now, with just plain language, without learning to code, you can get ordinary Tanzanians, the mamambogas, the daladala drivers, all of those guys, just with language, they can create highly technical, highly creative, highly technical works. So it's about embracing this technology, doing away with the precautionary principle, but taking caution as we invent the future.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to you, Princely. A positive note on which to end negatively. It's not a thing to sort of give grades to one's panels, but for me, it's always a great, Philip, a great inspiration. It's a delight to be a journalist, because I get to talk to clever people like you as a takeaway. So thank you very, very much. And I think that to close, I'm going to invite Ahmed Salim, who is the son of the birthday boy, and Ahmed will wish us all good night.
Thanks, Mwalimu. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
All right.
Sorry, my video is off. I'm actually in the middle of something in the office. But real quick, just thank you to everyone who participated, and really great conversations. I think we could spend quite a few hours on this. Really relevant topic. And yeah, thank you all for joining and spending your time with us. And all the birthday wishes to Mzee Salim will be read out to him. So thank you very much. And yeah, have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you. And bye-bye. Let's meet again in Nairobi and Dar es Salaam and Dodoma.
Thank you so much for your excellent moderation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Yeah.